What's the craziest butterfly effect that happened to you because of a small decision you made? Made a last minute decision to go to a friend's divorce party and met my wife. Under pressure from my sister. You're young. You need to have fun. I went out to a concert and then to a bar after. Had this girl I barely knew wingwoman me to a cute guy playing pool. Next thing you know, I'm celebrating my 3-year wedding anniversary. I didn't want to go out that night but did due to pressure from my sister. He didn't want to go out that night, but his friend wanted to play pool. And I literally can't imagine my life now if I hadn't had that random girl wingman me. Our paths never ever would have crossed otherwise. Of course it took me a long time to admit to my sister her role in the whole thing. Edited to clarify my existence. When my dad was about 20. He needed a phone number so he called the operator from a payphone. She gave him the number. He hung up. And she accidentally refunded the money back to the payphone. She called the payphone back and asked him if he could put the money back in, which he didn't. Hung up again. She accidentally refunded the money again and had to call back again to ask him to put the money back in. He didn't. Hung up again. She was so flustered. She refunded the money again and called back again, and my father got to chatting with her and got her number. They set up a date, which he stood him up for. Then she forgot his name when he called her again. Then they actually got coffee and 4 years later were married. This coming August it'll be 50 years for them. If my dad didn't need that phone number, I wouldn't be here. Edit. My dad still calls it the most expensive phone call he ever made. My desire for pizza set off a chain reaction that destroyed my family. One day got home from school and really wanted pizza. Family was poor, so spontaneous food trips weren't always in the cards. Really worked my pouty face to my mom and begged to go to the local pizza place for dinner. She said alright. While chilling there I saw my uncle walk by. And I was like, duh FCK. Uncle X, is that you? Dot. Now you might say, well, he wanted pizza, what's the big deal? Well, he lives several states away, so to arbitrarily be in town and not tell anyone was strange. Turned out he was having an affair with his sister-in-law, my aunt on the other side of the family. She was basically a money-grubbing WH-Ray and the family protested. One thing led to another and everyone hates each other now and we haven't had contact in like 20 years. I just wanted some pizza. Open bracket. At a university career fair and just has a long day taking to companies and heading out when I see a Honda booth. Designing cars would be awesome, but there is a huge line. It has been a long day. And what are the chances? But wait. They are giving away hats and shirts and model cars. So I talk to them. A day later I get a call back for an online assessment. I fill that out and don't hear anything back for a month or so. I get a call one night saying I was an alternate and someone cancelled last minute, so they want to fly me up for on-site interviews. I go and end up getting and accepting an offer. After graduation I move about 1,000 miles away from home for my new job, where a few years after I meet my now wife and we have 2 kids. I never would have crossed paths with her otherwise. So the entire course of my life was shifted because Honda gave away good swag at their career fair booth. I chose to rearrange the sequence of classes slightly before starting my education. By doing this, I had to commute to a different branch of the school in a different town than the one I was originally signed up for. On my first day there, I helped a girl who had managed to break both of her arms in a drunken shopping cart accident. I learned later, this girl, whom I would absolutely never have met had I not changed my classes around, is my wife through 14 years. Edit. Oh wow. This blew up. Thanks so much for the badges and awards. Kind strangers. I had to call my heart surgeon to give him my new insurance. I had only just gotten them because the person who had them had the flu and was not getting back to me as soon as I got my numbers. I called surgeon. The receptionist said, "Oh. Hey. We just had a cancellation for this Friday. Do you want it?" Of course I wanted to get it over and not wait another month. Decided to take the open heart surgery cancellation appointment a month before my actual appointment. And well, Surgeon said that thank goodness I did, because once he got a look inside, he realized I would not have survived to the original appointment date. So, if the insurance lady didn't have the flu, I would have gotten those numbers a lot sooner and never gotten the offer to have the surgery when I did. Someone else's flu saved my life. In Afghanistan. Wasn't done with my coffee, so I passed on a trip from one base to another. There was another convoy a few hours later. Most everyone died who took the first convoy. My second cup of coffee wasn't even cold when I found out. Edit. Holy shit, guys and gals. Aka the Reddit community. I just checked my phone and have so much outpouring of support that I'm overwhelmed. Thanks for caring. Trying not to tear up. Not working. Out of university. Looking for a job and exhausting all the online resources. On a whim, I looked in the career section in a print newspaper that was lying around in the house. We never subscribed to that paper. I don't know why it was even there. Got the job in a different city. Met someone who is now one of my best friends. Who introduced me to their friends. Who introduced me to their friends, and so on. Until I was eventually introduced to my wife. If I'd found a job where I actually planned on working, there is absolutely no way I would have crossed paths with any of these people. Edit 1. I met my wife through a friend. Who I met through another friend. Who I met through another friend. Who I met through the first friend I made at the company. Edit 2. I guess I need to go watch Early Edition. Close bracket. 4 years ago, a kid I barely knew from school invited me to a Six Flags. I was a bit of a loner at the time and I heard rumors about this kid being weird. So I intended to not go. On the day he wanted me to go, I was feeling extra bored and decided on a whim, why not? So I went and met this kid and two of his friends I've never met at a Six Flags. 4 years later, and that kid is my best friend. And I have 3 other very close friends I met through him. Not only that, but I also met my first girlfriend because of the connection some of my new friends had. It transformed my high school years from being alone to having an amazing group of friends I could do almost anything with. I intended to ask my best friend to be my best man one day. And I don't intend on ever getting out of touch with any of them. I'm home from college now. And we are going to have a lot of fun together. Best decision I've ever made. I finished working half an hour earlier and I was sent home by my boss, an old friend, on holiday in our hometown. Texted me out of the blue and asked me if I could pick up her American friend because she could not make it in time and I was the only one who spoke English. Took a shower, shaved my head, picked her up, and 10 months later I married her. About 10 years ago, there were no PC games to play, so I tried using Windows XP's Movie Maker out of boredom. I didn't know that I'm going to enjoy it and take it seriously. Now, I'm currently working on a TV film production as a video editor. Clarification. I mean, there's no games that is installed with our computer back then. At 15 I decided to stay home to play a soccer match rather than go babysit for my aunt and uncle. As a result, my uncle went out alone, took a shortcut home, fell into a river and drowned. Edit. Thanks for the award and all the support. It is much appreciated. Second edit. Thank you for the added awards. The older I get, the more I am constantly cognizant of the vast cascade of seemingly insignificant decisions and actions that led me to where I am. For example, a decision 25 years ago to change a refrigerator light bulb before going out resulted in my being at the wrong time and place so as to get mugged. Which resulted in my decision to move out of the city I had been living in. Which resulted in my meeting my wife. And from there to having all my kids and the whole shebang. I would have had a different whole shebang had I not changed that light bulb that afternoon. But the path to the present led through that, and 1,000 other, similarly trivial decisions. Was going to carpool with my aunt to a family gathering. At the last minute I decided to go by myself so I could leave early if I wanted. It was a ways out of town and I didn't want to be stuck there. On the way there she drove off the road into a ditch. She was okay, but the passenger side of her car was totally smashed in. I have one for another person. In 2014, I was coaching my twins, MF, rec flag football team. My oldest player has a younger sister who came to watch a practice. We will call her Grace. She saw my daughter on the team. Told her dad there's a girl on that team. And the next week, she was on my roster. Her and my daughter became fast friends. While the flag football season was wrapping up, I was putting together my roster for the upcoming rec volleyball team. At the end of one of my practices, my daughter invited Grace to play on the volleyball team together. Grace had played the previous season and not cared for it too much. Grace agreed and played from rec to club then to high school with my daughter. My daughter graduated last year, and I watched Grace, as captain, lead her team to a state championship, and she has a D1 scholarship for volleyball next fall. I was parking my car on the street and was about to shut it off, but I noticed my car got pretty dirty last time I parked under that tree. Usually I don't care, but I drove forward another space. The next day I came outside and my car's rear suspension was damaged and tires were bent. Someone had smashed into it and took off. I went on to spend about $500 in repairs, and my insurance couldn't cover it unless I found out who did it. I was very upset I couldn't go to work, and the tow truck driver pointed out that a neighbor had cameras up. I went as a last resort to ask those neighbors if they caught anything. The next day they emailed me footage of a vehicle that hit my car and parked a few houses up. They found the vehicle and took pictures of the damages too. I ended up getting $4,000 from their insurance company. Watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and got so annoyed at the candidates not knowing a simple question about Katy Perry that I applied. Got in. Got to play. Won a lot of money. Booked a holiday to a dream destination with that money. Met my husband there. We now have a 1-year-old son. Close bracket. I passed the test, then written and in a large hotel meeting room, for Jeopardy. One of only 20 out of 200. I never got called to be on the show, but just making the cut was a huge confidence booster for me. Was it fun being on Millionaire? I sent a friend from secondary school, who I had a huge crush on, a message saying happy birthday a couple years after we left school. Did the whole "we'll have to catch up soon" thing. Not expecting much. He replied with "how about Monday?" I saw him that Monday for a coffee. Next month will be our 6th anniversary. Best thing that ever happened to me. My friends joke I'm queen of escaping the friend zone. Edit. Wow, thank you for the awards and upvotes. Loved seeing how many other similar stories there are. Makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. Stay safe everyone. I had to renew the sticker on my license plate a couple of years ago and really didn't feel like sitting in the waiting room by myself forever, so I told my mom I'd take her out to dinner after if she came with me. The guy working at the counter turned out to be my mom's long lost biological brother. If she hadn't come with me I would have never known. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. I'll let my mom know that you all think her story is cool too. Cheers. I made a dumb Facebook post because I was bored, like for a TBH. A girl liked the post and I sent her a message. 8 years later. We are now married. Just wanted to try a cigarette when I was young. Now I'm barely surviving without it. No. You're barely surviving with it. 2 years ago I was in a hospital for a week due to acne and was extremely bored. The Wi-Fi was slow. So I asked my mom to bring me a sketchbook and pencils so I could draw. I am now starting a career as an artist animator. There was this rainy day that flooded a small piece on the street on the way to my now ex-GF house. She had to stay over the night. Now I'm someone's father. In high school I read House of Leaves and one day was trying to explain the concept of the book to a friend. My drama teacher overheard. Said it sounded a bit like Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. On his recommendation I read that book, which sparked an interest in Russian literature. Then I branched out from there. Always seeking out new reading opportunities. My quest to find more reading led me to major in English and become a teacher myself. Being a teacher at a Title I school has had a huge impact on my political philosophy as well. So basically I am who I am today because my drama teacher suggested a book to me. Edit. I also suggest everyone read Pale Fire. Very good read. I sent a message to a girl in high school just asking if she was alright, which led to dating her for almost 3 years. During which time she convinced me to try the drama club she went to, which convinced me to take drama class the following year, which made me take it the next year, where I met my next girlfriend, who introduced me to the friends I have today. And if I hadn't met them, I wouldn't still feel sick from drinking on Saturday night. Moral of the story: never message a girl. You'll wake up 4 years later with a hangover. Years ago I picked up a hitchhiker who turned out to be a pretty philosophical kind of guy. One thing he said that resonated with me was, why would somebody want to do the same thing every day? 15 years later I still think about that guy every day as I'm commuting to the office again. About a year ago, I went to a study group with some people in my major. Now I have the closest set of friend I could ever ask for. They helped me when my car was broken and I couldn't get to and fro from college, when I didn't have enough money to buy myself food. Now, I have a good job, and 2 of my friends and I are getting an apartment together in a couple of months. Right before freshman year of high school, I was interested in trying out for the tennis team. I was lukewarm about it, and the morning of tryouts my dad came into the room and asked if I wanted to go. I was leaning towards no and just wanted to be lazy in bed. But my dad asked, "Do you think you'll regret it if you don't?" Double quote. The answer was yes. So I went and tried out. I ended up meeting my absolute best friends, rekindled my love for tennis, was on varsity for 3 years, and it completely dictated my high school career. Decided to try weed in high school. Met a dude through weed connections. Became roommates. Roommate talks me into trying World of Warcraft. Meet a girl through WoW. Years later date her. Year after that move states. And marry her. Got kids now. My children are a direct result of weed. Passed a certification exam by 1 point that saved me from a dead-end job. Now my company is paying for me to move to a new country. I decided to invite my chem lab partner to lunch on the first day of college, just to be friendly and try to make more than one friend at school. We met up with the only other friend I'd made at school so far. He thought my lab partner was cute, invited himself to hang out with her, and then fell in love with her roommate instead. He ended up married to the roommate. They've been together for 22 years and have 2 children. Not really a small decision, but a few years back I had the opportunity to do a research internship at a university in Liverpool. Decided not to do it, and a few months later I got an internship in Chicago. My supervisor mentor there was the best I'd ever worked with, and she now got me into a PhD program where I'll be working with her again. Close bracket. The first man I dated after I divorced was my soulmate. I couldn't handle being in a good, not perfect, but very positive, relationship. So I moved 1,200 miles away, butterfly effect. Kept in touch with soulmate, off and on relationships for 3 years. Finally came to realize he was the one. Told him I was moving back to be with him. 5 days later he died. Alone. I hate myself for not being there. My friends took me to Malaga in Spain for a long weekend to cheer me up after my mum died, and 4 years later I'm still here and have never been happier. I owe them everything for that spontaneous trip. After years of dealing with and being embarrassed by my mom's temper tantrums, I called her out on her behavior when she flipped her kid at my roommate at the time. Q5 long years of harassment, hate and general chaos. However, it led to my dad finally divorcing her and marrying someone who loved him. Myself experiencing a lot but pulling the trigger on moving and finding a wicked job. Added bonus. Without her in my life I had way less stress and drama to contend with. Decided I would rather use my bathroom than a porta potty. Found my wife cheating. She attempted suicide. I moved multiple states away. In the 7 years since, I have made nothing but positive changes and went from $18 hour laborer to a well-respected person in my profession making 6 figures. I'd probably still be working that dead-end job. Aside from that, without recounting all the details, I went to see a doctor about a splinter from chopping firewood. 6 months later they removed most of my kidney with renal cell carcinoma. Without the splinter I'd likely be dead from kidney cancer. A few years ago my friends kept asking me to go to the city with them for this restaurant they had been to and loved. One time finally say fine and go that day. By the end of the night I had eaten Korean food for the first time, had my first cigar, driven a brand new Mustang, was in a car accident, not the Mustang, was detained for several hours for drunken behavior and peed in front of police. Not my finest hours toward the end, but most of it was good. Edit. Accident wasn't my fault. I said hi to the new kid in 5th grade. Turned out he lived in my neighborhood, so we decided to hang out. Fast forward to now. We're best friends. Been through crazy ups and downs. I've made friends through him that helped me through my coming out and a lot more. We've just started to fall out because of quarantine, but I know he'll be there for me no matter what. I talked to the guy in the queue after we'd both tried to get the last pastry in his shop. Turns out a new batch was done, so I got the stale one, he got a fresh one. Turns out we had a mutual friend and a month later we started dating. 5 years later we're getting a mortgage together. Grew up in a small hick town. Mostly white people. So I stood out like a sore thumb. Most melanated folks in that town were dumber than boxes of rocks. And I had no reason to think otherwise for myself. So throughout elementary and middle school I made good grades, but never thought of myself as smart. One day in 8th grade, there was an announcement that there was a researcher visiting from the university and he'd be conducting IQ tests for a limited number of students who signed up. Most of my friends were shitting all over it, but I thought it would be fun to try it. I scored extremely well, and the examiner asked me, what advanced courses are you taking? I was like, well, none. That set into a chain of events where he went and spoke to the principal and guidance counselors to make sure that I got put into the advanced placement courses next semester. I never knew I was smart until someone told me I was. Ended up getting multiple degrees in physics, atmospheric science and excelling in my field, all because of a whim to take an IQ test. I went out for a beer with a coworker. 3 years later I am a convicted felon who did 13 months in a state prison. Court-ordered AA meetings. Difficulty finding work. Cannot buy a house for me and my GF because I can't drive anywhere. Can't have kids for same reason. Miserable. Depressed. Suicidal. Horrible nightmares. DUI folks. Don't drink and drive. All from a beer. Grudgingly sold a $300 cost item for $310 because my dad wouldn't let me counteroffer to the client. This client then got me another client that very day in the exhibition that gave me over $50k in business, and that client recommended me to another company which again in that very exhibition resulted in $500k cash sale. All 3 are still my clients with well over 5 million sales in last 3 years. Dad taught me, no matter how small the deal or the client, give them importance, and it worked wonders. Not trying to make that $50 extra in the start probably resulted in net profit of well over $1 million. I skipped class to go smoke a cigarette in the parking lot while I was in high school. On my way out, the Air Force recruiter who was setting up for lunchtime stopped me on my way to the smoke break. I was the only person in the halls at the time because lunch wasn't for another 30 minutes, so I talked to him because I didn't want to be a DCK and ignore him. 7 years and going strong. I've been all over the USA. Had a deployment to Kuwait. Living a career and on my way to Germany next, maybe with Korean GF future wife. IDK yet. Been one hell of a smoke break so far. I saw a Sandra Bullock movie where I think she lived on a houseboat, and thought that's nicer than living with my parents. So I bought a houseboat. Later I bought a sailboat. In driving the sailboat up the intracoastal waterway, It broke down during repair, requiring multiple free dives underwater. I became infected with barnacle bacteria. No one could figure it out at first. So off to the hospital for a few weeks I went. Few weeks later, I am telling this same story, and a girl says sounds like Mycobacterium marinum. Which, apparently it was. I required lots of antibiotics. So obviously, we got married. And later divorced. But now I have 2 kids I play Factorio with. And I like that. During middle school, I asked the pastor of my parents' church if I could practice piano on the church's grand piano on my way home from school each weekday. I walked. And it was on the way. He heard me playing Bach, Beethoven, Mozart and Chopin and asked if I'd like to try the church's large pipe organ, which I did. And was thrilled by the experience. Not long thereafter, he asked me to become the church's interim organist after their musician died unexpectedly, a position which lasted until college began. Be 20-year-old bachelor at all-inclusive Mexican resort. 10 tequilas and I'm ready to charm the ladies. Decide against the beach party and head to the sports bar. A gaggle of German women seem to be celebrating a birthday. Time to shine. Blackout me puts on the charm and using my Rammstein lyrics I managed to impress the birthday girl. Back to her room. JPG. Run 6 of the bathroom shower 6. Eggs. We awake. She forgets my name but I remember hers. Oh yeah. Fucking smooth ass gentleman over here. 12 years later I'm sitting on the toilet writing you this. In the house we built together. Never choose the beach party. Went to a club's open house in college for the free pizza. Joined the club, then that led me to joining a camp for work. Met my wife at that camp and also some of my siblings met their significant others after I convinced them to work there too. The connections I've made through that camp have lasted longer than any HS or college connection. All BC I wanted some free pizza. Long time ago. I was in college and learning about Unix. The talk command. The finger command, etc. I did a finger and saw a list of students at a university across the country from where I was studying. One student, who happened to be logged in at the time, had the exact same first name as my mother's name, which was an uncommon name. I tried the talk session and she accepted. I just wanted to tell her that I loved her name because it was the same as my mother's name and we started talking from there. Eventually met. Then ended up getting married and still married. 39 years later. I was living in London and was offered a job in Dubai. So I sat in a bar and wrote a huge list of pros and cons of taking the job and moving to Dubai. In the end it was pretty even so I flipped a coin. Head I go. Tails I stay. It was heads. 15 years later I'm still here with wife and child. Boyfriend planning his whole summer full with work study stuff. I didn't want to be dependent on him for my holiday fun so I decided to take a vacation by myself. Figured I speak Spanish and like dogs. So why not volunteer at a dog shelter in South America for a while. Long story short. We now have a dog from South America. I can think of 2 small choices that have heavily altered my life. The first was an older member of my fraternity inciting me to attend his wedding. It wasn't a huge event and we weren't and still aren't particularly close. I thought it was odd and I really had no desire to go. Something I heavily debated. Met my now wife there and I can't imagine life without her. Second, I asked a guy to join my D&D game while we were hanging out in a big group. He is a typical sports guy and I knew it was a long shot but he ended up deciding to try it. On a break during one of our sessions. He told me about a job he think I'd be a great fit for. So long story short I'm now working at that company he referred me to and for the first time in my life I'm not dreading Monday mornings and I'm financially stable. I was applying online for a large national internship. I could apply for 10 different positions between September, March. And they were rolling admissions for different departments. I decided at 11:45 PM in early March to apply for one more position. Turns out, the whole national application process closed at midnight that day. That last internship I applied for was the one I got. 5 years later. I'm still working there. Moved halfway across the country. And I've gotten to go to grad school because of it. It's likely that I'm going to make a career of it. All because I decided. I've got some time. I'll submit one more. I was doing the typical post-uni backpackers trip through Europe. And decided to change my path to visit Vienna. In the hostel I stayed at, I met a girl who had taught in South America for a year and I thought it sounded really interesting. A month later, she emails me a job opening at a school in Ecuador that had been passed to her with a "saw this and thought of you" type message. I applied, interviewed, got the job, and moved to Ecuador within 3 weeks. Several months later, I met the love of my life. I am now in my 7th year teaching in Ecuador and 6th year with my girlfriend, with plans to move together to China to teach next year. Life crazy. Dog. Walking to work. Nick. Waiting on the corner for the light to change. Light says walk, and as I step off the curb a woman crosses in front of me and right across the top of my feet. Irritated, I accidentally lightly kick her one ankle into the other. She glances back angrily, and I say oops. Sorry. We both keep walking and she turns into the theater where I work. Later find out she works in wardrobe in the basement while I'm upstairs running lights. She asks everybody who I am and tells them all what a DCK I am. They tell her I'm not so bad, and after a couple of weeks we end up in a group together going out for drinks. Just celebrated our 16th wedding anniversary. I love seeing all the comments about how a small decision led to someone meeting the best people in their life. I remember one day I asked to join my lab partner for lunch and met some of my best friends, and we've stayed close for the last 4 years. Life is crazy, man. In 2016 I agreed to go hiking with a friend after not really hiking since I was a kid. I was obese and not loving myself for many reasons. I had recently graduated college and started a career I wasn't terribly happy with. 4 years later and I'm hiking every other weekend. I've dropped 70 pounds and a lot of emotional baggage. And I'm gearing up to through hike the Appalachian Trail next year before I make a career change. That one hike in South Carolina sparked something in me I can't explain, but it's been amazing. In 2001 my wife and I took a 10-day vacation to Paris. At the end, we didn't fit everything in we wanted. So we reserved a new flight home 2 days later to have some more time. At the last minute, we decided changing the tickets was going to cost too much. And the connection home through New Jersey was just gonna mean a long, tiring day of travel, so we cancelled the change and took our original flight home. On the 9th of September, the flight we almost changed to was hijacked. Me and some friends semi-gate crashed an acquaintance's birthday party at 15. We knew most of the people there from school. But one person we didn't know was the daughter of the birthday girl's mum's best friend. Only spoke to her briefly and cocked up exchanging numbers. She found me through a friend on MSN a few weeks later. Fast forward to now being 27 and we've been together 10 years and lived together for 5. Extremely hungover on a Saturday morning. My ex convinced me to go to the gym. While at the gym started small talking a guy who was looking for a short-term lease, and we happened to have an extra room. His fiancée ending up introducing me and my best friend to our now wives. Professor recommended that I apply for my university's graduate program with her recommendation, even though I was struggling to pull up my terrible GPA. Was accepted and now I'm in my 2nd year of PhD program in chemistry. In school, some of my friends played hockey and I thought, let's just go and see what the deal is. It can't be that hard. It was effing hard. And eventually grew interested and loved it. Went on to play hockey at national level for 4 consecutive years. I joined a Christian ministry to help me become a straight man and spent 15 years married to a woman. Attempted suicide. And lived a generally pitiful and painful existence, essentially ruining a good woman's life and my own simultaneously. I'm course correcting currently and it's a bitch. Last year I was at a festival in a city a couple of miles south from the village I live in. At around 1 20 in the morning, me and my 2 friends had to rush to get the 1:30 bus home because if not we would have had to wait about an hour and were getting tired. On our way to the bus I decided to run down an alley and take a piss. This led to us missing the bus. Me and my 2 friends had an argument and one of us stormed off into the McDonald's beside the bus station. He was in there for longer than we expected, so we called him only to have a girl answer the phone saying he was sitting with them and that we should come in. We went in and saw him with a group of 5 girls and we all sat there drinking cans of Heineken until we got kicked out. I got one of the girls' Snapchats and this resulted in texting back and forth. Eventually we met up and starting dating. 3 months ago we broke each other's hearts. The pain I'm feeling right now is all because I wanted to take a piss. When I was 17 we would always hang out at the local Denny's. The day before Christmas Eve, my friends and I were hanging out there like normal when our good friend, who moved about an hour away about 6 months prior, walked in. Turns out he was in town looking for a toy for his nephew because his small town didn't have it. He was driving home and thought he saw my car, which was a very common red Escort, in the parking lot, so he decided to come in. We all hung out a while as many of us hasn't seen him since he moved. He died in a car crash that night. Another driver fell asleep at the wheel. We were looking at moving like an hour away, but I made an offhand comment about going farther and my parents took it seriously. So we moved 5,500 kilometers across the country. The day we got here I went into a David's tea and flirted with the girl serving us. 5 years later we're married during a pandemic. I suggested having a study group at a friend's house nearby my university. Spent the best part of 3 years of university at that house with an amazing group of friends, culminating to most of us moving to Scotland for a final year of study. It was quite an adventure. IDK if this really counts, but someone I met in a Discord server for a Minecraft mod invited me to another server. There I met my best friend who got me to meet a lot of amazing friends and even my girlfriend. When I was 14 I went with my friend to a LAN party and there I saw someone wearing a band t-shirt, so I looked up the band and got into it. Then I found a forum dedicated to that band and joined it, and I started to really like forums, so I joined a forum for a different band and 4 years later someone joined that forum who became my friend. Then 2 years after that I had totally FK'd up my life and I was planning to leave everything behind and start over somewhere else, and I asked that friend if I could live with her for a few months. I ended up not leaving, but a few months later she told me she had been thinking a lot about the idea of us being together and that she was in love with me. So she came to see me and it quickly became romantic after a few days. Then we were long distance for 4 years. Then we got married and have been married and together almost 5 years. So basically, I wouldn't have met my wife if I never went to the LAN party. Which was quite likely because I'm normally very introverted and prefer to be alone. Decided to audition for a musical at my local community theater. I had never been in a musical and wanted to gain the confidence to try out for a different musical. Later that year, I made the show, got dumped during the rehearsal process, and eventually started dating and married the lead. We even got married on the stage we met on. Because of that small decision to try something new, I gained some of the best friends I've ever had, gained confidence in myself, and met my husband. I was forced to take a theology class and I hated it. So I went and talked to every dean I could to take it another semester and they wouldn't let me. Then I went to change class sections cause I couldn't stand the professor, and the person changing my schedule mentioned there were 2 sections available both over an hour and a half long twice a week. I randomly picked one and ended up finding my partner there, and we've been dating for almost 2 years now. I decided to go to my friend's cosplay club meeting in college. I wasn't doing much, so it was a nice way to spend an afternoon. Further along, I ended up the secretary of the club and helped to set it up as an official club at the school. I ended up being the VP in my senior year just 2 years later. During my senior year, one of the members decided to do a makeup tutorial for everybody and asked me to help out and be a model for her. That session made me realize that I was trans. And here I am over 4 years later, Celebrating a year with my boyfriend and happiest I've ever been. More than 10 years ago I had finished an exam in uni and decided to take the lesser used exit from the building to go home. On my way out I met someone from my secondary school and we started talking. I mentioned I was looking for a student room for the next year and she said she was going to leave her room and gave me the address and contact information of the landlady. I ended up moving in her old student room. I met my current boyfriend of 9 years because he lived in the room next to me. If I had taken the main exit, I would never have met the love of my life. Moved from Chicago to Houston in the early 90s. I was happy. Great career choice. Wife was not happy. She set up a weekend in Austin. By the time we left on Sunday she said I want to move there. I did not want to leave my job but figured I could give it a shot. Fax to resume on Sunday night. Phone screen on Monday morning. They booked a flight for me to interview on that Friday. The following Tuesday morning I have a FedEx offer letter and started 2 weeks later. That company exploded in growth. Early internet explosion. Now I am 55 and have been retired for a few years. Living the dream in Austin. And I bike every day. Told a tiny throwaway white lie at work and some job worth office rat told the boss. They ran searches on me and found I'd accidentally searched my name into the database a month earlier, entirely unrelated. I was sacked within the week and I'm now unable to work in the field. I guess I deserved it though. I said yes to a door-to-door salesman. I'm not gonna specify what it was, which 8 years later resulted in me teaching at a university where I met my partner and mother of my child. Same person. Smartasses. A coworker asked me to go with her to her gym to cancel her membership. I'm more assertive. I really didn't want to because I had a final project due the next day. But I went. She promised it'd be quick. We stopped at Walgreens on the way so I could grab some supplies for the project. Almost 10 years later. I'm now married to the cashier from that day. Got wasted with friends and walked down the road to Wendy's. Got locked out of my friend's apartment upon returning and everyone inside was passed out. Drove home drunk so I didn't freeze to death and got arrested after flipping my car. As a result, I dropped out of college to pay DUI fines and met my best friend at my new job. Proceeded to meet my current friend group through him. Best friend's brother found a puppy on the side of the road. Got myself a dog. Best friend got married. I was best man. Banged one of the bridesmaids. Got myself a girlfriend. A year later. She moves out of state and I go with her. Got myself a nice job and apartment. Prob's going to marry her and now I'm no longer an alcoholic disaster. Feels good man. TLDR. Drove home drunk. Ruined my life. Pulled a reversal. Result may vary. Showed up late to the first day of a class and the only available seat was on the opposite side of the room from everyone I knew. Ended up becoming best friends with the people sitting around me and we have been best friends for over 15 plus years. Roommates and bridesmaids. I don't even talk to the other people that I knew before in that class. Crazy. Years ago. While playing Second Life, don't judge lol. I taught myself GIMP then Photoshop so I could create my own clothes. Later on, I was allowed to teach one class of Photoshop along with my science classes. When the computer teacher at my school retired, I was asked to take over and now I'm teaching animation, MOS, and maybe next year 3D art or game design, can't decide. A geeky little hobby has led to having the funnest, most satisfying job. Failed an exam in final year uni by a couple marks. Meant I failed the module. I was originally doing a 4-year integrated masters. But because of the fail they made me graduate 3rd year with a bachelor's. But would allow me to do a separate year-long masters. Because of that I was the only person free in a uni group to be sent to the US, from the UK. For 4 days to do a 5-minute presentation. And ended up applying to jobs later in the year, which is also when my ideal job became available, which I got. Broke up with my boyfriend after a turbulent, on and off again relationship. Felt the need to rebound a bit and have some casual hookups. Overheard my co-workers talking about Tinder and decided to download it on a whim. Swiped right on a cute guy who I ended up going on a date with. 6 years later. We are still together and got married last year. Close bracket. I wrote a really bad Doctor Who manga crossover fanfiction in 6th grade that starred my friends and I in our middle school building. I've now published my first book and am working on my second. I was going to order 80 physical Bitcoins from a coin maker back when they were only a couple of bucks. But he only accepted shipping payment in cash. I was like $2 short and didn't want to overdraft, so I ended up not buying them. Instead they were stolen off the website I was storing them on. Cue the people who are going to lecture me on not your keys not your coins. I know. Guys. I know. Decided to talk to a random lady in line at TJ Maxx. Found out we both had feeding tube kids. She told me how to use gravity to feed my kid in 5 minutes than an hour with a pump. Changed our lives. Allowed us more freedom and led to my daughter getting hungry, which led to her having her tube removed last week. Back in 2012 I was on OkCupid and set my search radius to local matches only. A cute guy popped up and I shot off a message before I realized that there was a glitch that put him in my approved radius when, in reality, he was in a different state. I'd never had that happen before. And it never happened again after that one time. Anyway, we're married now. My boyfriend and I met on Tinder. The first time we started talking, I stopped talking to him pretty quickly because I thought something he said was kind of rude. I read the tone wrong and ghosted him. A few weeks later he messaged me again to start over. I was gonna ignore him, but something told me I should give him a shot. We went on the best first date of my life. We fell in love. Moved in together. And are planning on getting married. Best decision I ever made. I covered a shift for someone in a shitty retail job. Met a random dude and started helping him as an assistant. He taught me a lot. Ended up continuing in that industry and have been in for 15 plus years. Now I'm in a senior role at a large company with a pretty awesome life. Decided not to jump off a cliff near my house when I was jobless and living at home. 6 months later I had 2 jobs and my first apartment. 2020 may suck, but I'm glad I didn't miss it. I was hungry one year in my dorm and went to a different floor's student lounge to get some unclaimed food from the community fridges. The only girl in the lounge invited me to sit with her and chill. We've been married for 6 years. Close bracket. 4 years ago in the summer I was 17 and needed a summer job. Got one and it introduced me to acting and some of my best friends. I've now been in 6 or 7 short films and have all I need to launch the career I never knew I wanted. Just graduated college and could not find a job to save my life. Criminology and sociology. Went to the local college in my area to inquire about an entirely different degree that would guarantee employment. Nursing. Guidance counselor told me it would be another 3 years to obtain. Down and out. He asked me what it was that I wanted to do. I told him investigate internal fraud. Turns out his wife was VP of a BSA department at a local bank. Started working as an analyst and worked my way up to making more money than I could ever imagine and loving what I do in compliance. My first boss is still one of my best friends.